I'm Ed Griffin, and it's my privilege today to be talking with James Turk, who is the founder and chairman of GoldMoney. James, thanks for giving me some time. I have some rather personal questions I wanted to ask you, because I know that our subscribers and our members have heard about you, and they want to know more about you as a person.
Okay.
So we know that you're founder and chairman of GoldMoney. Tell us first, what is GoldMoney?
Well, GoldMoney is a very convenient, economical, and safe way to buy and sell gold and silver online. We're based here in Europe. We're storing over $2.1 billion of precious metals that are owned by our customers worldwide. We have customers in 100 different countries. You know, the way I look at it is that, gold has been money for 5,000 years. And the attributes and characteristics that made gold as money in the first place have not been lost. They haven't been destroyed or disappeared. They've just been ignored or forgotten. The reason why the gold price has been rising is more and more people are understanding that those attributes and characteristics of gold are timeless, and more people are seeking gold and silver as a means of preserving their purchasing power. But again, it's still saving as a form of savings, but I think that the technology is there, and it won't be too long before we start using gold and silver as a form of currency as well.
Well, I hope you're right, because that's something I would like to see happen also. But a moment ago you mentioned that word safety or security.
Yes.
And let me be the devil's advocate. Now, we know that we've seen in the past, 20 or 30 years, some organizations have talked about trading gold or silver on the internet or by mail. In other words, they'll hold the gold or silver in a vault, and you have a piece of paper that says that you own it, and then all of a sudden this organization is gone, and therefore the gold and silver is gone too. What makes us think that you're going to be any different?
Yeah, that's really a good question. And when I first started, or even before I started GoldMoney, I thought, well, this is in the 1990s. How am I going to get people to send wire money to an internet site? And I thought, well, the answer is I have to build a company that is one that I would do business with. In other words, how would I provide the assurances of integrity to convince me, and being trained financially the way I am, I've been very, very skeptical of financial structures. I said it has to satisfy my own high criteria. And there are a couple of key elements to it, the most important of which is that people have to know that the weight of gold and silver in the vault is equal to the quantity of gold and silver that they own. And what we do is we have two different auditing firms going through the vaults to confirm that, in fact, that's exactly what has happened, and it has happened since inception. And I sort of developed what I call free market regulation for GoldMoney. GoldMoney is a process, and if you view it to be like a pie, and you cut that pie into different pieces, you hire experts to handle each part of that pie, and they're given two tasks. They have to handle their particular speciality, and they also have to look at other things to make sure that no one is cheating the system. And when you're hiring first-class firms to contribute to the process, they're different than regulators because they have a bottom-line accountability. With free market regulation, we divided the whole process of GoldMoney up into a variety of different specialities. In other words, we have a server farm, we have different vaults, we actually have two different vaulting companies, insurance, etc. And everybody's looking over this. And then in addition to that, we have two different auditing firms auditing the gold and silver in the vault, as well as confirming that our processes, everything that we represent on the website and in the customer agreement, are working exactly like they're supposed to work. And of course, because it's not a fractional reserve system or anything, people can take their gold out at any time. We have many people who actually redeem their gold for smaller bars and have it shipped to them wherever they happen to live. So it's worked very well. We've launched 10 years ago. And we're safeguarding now $2.1 billion of assets for our customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, you actually encourage people to take some of their bullion out, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't discourage that.
No, I don't. I'm a firm believer that when you're talking about gold, there are two types of gold. There's paper gold and there's physical gold. They're entirely different. Physical gold is a tangible asset. It does not have counterparty risk. In other words, you're not exposed to someone's balance sheet. When you have paper gold, you do have counterparty risk. It's a financial asset. So if you have a paper certificate, it's based on that guy's promise, whoever wrote that certificate, it's based on his promise that he will deliver gold to you. He has the financial capacity to deliver gold to you when you ask for it in the future. Those are fundamentally different concepts. In gold money, you do not have counterparty risk. You do have a performance risk in the sense that will we perform as we say we do, and that's where the auditors come in to provide this independent third-party verification that everything is working as it's supposed to. These auditors provide, along with the other governance procedures that we follow, the assurance of integrity that your gold and silver are safe. And here's the basic issue. You know, when you're buying physical gold, there are only two ways to do it. You buy it and you store it yourself, or you buy it and have someone store it for you, which is what we do in gold money. Now, you may want to store, 5,000, 25,000 in your house or buried in your backyard. But, if you're a wealthy individual, do you want to store $1 million of gold in your basement? Maybe not.
It might be hazardous to your health.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Right.
so you have to look for alternatives, which means that professional storage is one way to do it. And when you're looking for professional storage, you have to have the assurances of integrity that your gold and silver are safe. And the only way you can do that is by having this independent third-party verification.
Well, okay, that makes a lot of sense, but what about transparency? How can a person know that this is really being done if they're of the skeptical nature? As you said, you are skeptical, and most of us are.
These audit reports are available for every customer to read, and they go back to through the history of the company. So I encourage people, you can open a holding, which is free to do, have access to these reports, and read through the reports, and you can see the detailed nature of these reports confirm that all of the metal is there.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody wanted to go directly to the auditors, would they be able to do that?
I suppose people have. I don't know if the auditors would be able to say much more other than we've completed this report. Here's a copy of it. But yeah, people have to do whatever they need to do for their own due diligence to satisfy themselves that this is something that could perhaps provide a solution, to finding a way to preserve your wealth and preserve your purchasing power. And gold and silver are the way to do that, and making certain that you're having your bedrock asset stored safely and securely is an important part of one's overall portfolio.
Well, I'm convinced that you've got a great program. As you know, I'm one of your account holders, and I've introduced your program to others too. And that's something I do with the great hesitation, because you don't want to be responsible if things go bad. But I feel comfortable with your program.
Thank you.
But let me ask you the really hard question now.
Okay.
What is your vision? How can we prepare for the worst case scenario, which would be if these rogue governments decide to start making the holding of gold and silver illegal, or if they start to confiscate private holdings, if they try and move into a warehouse such as yours,
Yes.
and say, okay, this is the government speaking now, and we're closing you down. What is your plan for that?
Yeah. My motto is always hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Right.
And we've even taken that into consideration as we've been building gold money. And given the fact that the future is totally unknowable, we can only sort of speculate as to what may or may not happen. But as a consequence, it's hard to come up with what might be the perfect solution, because we just don't know how things are going to unfold. But if there is one right answer to mitigate the risks and the uncertainty of the future, I think it's diversification. You have to diversify your gold your physical gold in as many ways as possible. Buy some, store it at home, buy some and store it geographically in different parts of the world, which is what we offer in Gold Money. There are vaults in London, Zurich, or Hong Kong. So for example, in 1933, when Americans lost the right to own gold, when it was confiscated by Roosevelt, gold outside of the United States was not confiscated. Now, that may not mean they may not try to confiscate it in the future, but the historical precedent is that gold outside the U.S. was not confiscated, and that's a form of safety and security. But I mean, if you're really talking about a dire situation, and I'm not speaking now about any particular country, but we can look back at historical examples. If you were a Jew in Germany and did not prepare, you ended up in a very bad situation. There are going to be more situations in the future where people, if they're not prepared, are going to end up in a bad situation. So you have to think geographically, you have to think globally in terms of preserving the way of life that you and your family have come to used to. And if it means moving from one country to another country to maintain that lifestyle, I think people have to consider that as a possibility.
Yeah. It's not a very pleasant thought, but you do have to consider that worst case scenario.
Again, hope for the best, but always prepare for the worst. Always have those options that are available to you just in case the worst happens. Because if you read history, the worst happens time and time again. I wrote an article a few years ago that was based on a book by Barton Biggs, which is one of the prominent Wall Street strategists. And he's basically talking about, bad things happen in history and you have to prepare for them. And let's hope that they don't happen again, but the reality is that sometimes bad things do happen and you have to be prepared so that you and your family are protected.
Well, I get that question quite a bit, and it's a hard one to answer because people don't want to hear anything with the word bad in it. They don't want to hear that things may not turn out just fine after all. But my feeling on this is that anything you do in the way of investment has risk. Everything has risk. I think that investing, or maybe that's not the right word, buying and saving gold and silver has a very low level of risk compared to other types. If you keep your wealth is in dollars, let's say, or euros or some other currency, national currency, that's the greatest risk of all. In fact, there's no risk there because you're going to lose it for sure. There's no risk factor. It's gone. Just kiss it off in a matter of time. And if you put it all in one vault, there's a risk. And if you spread it around in different vaults, there's a risk, less. But the bottom line is that the only thing that's greater risk is not to do any of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's another important element too. It's a question of what is a thing's value. You want to accumulate for your portfolio those things that are undervalued and remove from your portfolio those things that are overvalued. And all of my historical models show to me that gold is still very undervalued. Its price has been rising, but don't let that fool you. The price is rising because the dollar is losing purchasing power all of the time. The value of gold is still very undervalued, and therefore it's still worth accumulating, which again is another way of mitigating risks. Accumulate undervalued assets, start getting rid of overvalued assets. At some point in time in the future, the gold you're accumulating now, you're going to be spending.
That's right.
But that's a few years down the road. Continue to save it, continue to accumulate it.
If someone wants to learn more about your operation, where do they go on the internet?
Yeah, we're at GoldMoney.com, and I recommend that people just take a look. You can open a holding, which is free to do, and see whether or not it might help you in terms of the decisions that you have to make for your own portfolio.
James Turk, thank you for your words of wisdom. We benefit from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. It was a pleasure talking to you.